Revenge doesn't always roar. It whispers. For Caitlin Clark, it wasn't tweets or interviews. It was one quiet, powerful choice. She said no. No to Geno Auriemma. No to UConn's storied legacy. No to the $1 million offer that came too late. With one word, she let it all fall. That was her revenge. Silent, final, unstoppable.
Like I said earlier, they actually had odds that, she was like third or fourth in the betting odds to be MVP of the WNBA. That's such a slap in the face to every WNBA player. It's unbelievable, right?
On paper, it sounded insane. Turning down over $1 million for just 8 weeks of basketball. But this wasn't just a contract. It was a lifeline extended by a man who had once dismissed Caitlin Clark, belittled her, treated her like an afterthought. When she said no, she didn't just walk away from money. She delivered a quiet reckoning to someone who never saw it coming.
That's the worst part about new fans. They have no perspective. There's no context. So they just say ridiculous nonsense.
On paper, it seemed absurd. Who turns down over $1 million for just 8 weeks of basketball? But this wasn't about money. Not really. This was about something deeper. Respect, power, and quiet revenge. For Caitlin Clark, rejecting that offer wasn't just passing on a paycheck. It was a reckoning. A message to the man who had once dismissed her, overlooked her, and treated her like an afterthought. That man was Geno Auriemma, the self-proclaimed gatekeeper of women's basketball, the architect of UConn's dynasty, and the coach who had long believed he could define greatness. But Clark didn't need his approval. She didn't need his program, his spotlight, or his legacy. She built her own. And when he finally came calling, contract in hand, hoping to cash in on the empire she built without him, she responded with one word that carried the weight of years. No, and that's what made this moment bigger than basketball. This wasn't just about points, assists, or championships. It was about power shifting. For decades, Geno Auriemma controlled the narrative. He decided who mattered, who got the press, who faded into obscurity. If you wanted to reach the mountaintop, you went through him. Until Clark showed there was another way. Rewind to her teenage years. And Caitlin Clark wasn't a revolutionary. She was just a girl in Iowa with a dream. And like many, that dream led straight to UConn. The dynasty, the powerhouse, the home of legends like Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, Breanna Stewart. For a young player, there was no higher destination. Everyone assumed Clark was next in line. The most electric talent of her generation. Destined to be recruited by the greatest recruiter in the history of the sport. But the call never came. No phone call. No home visit. Barely a whisper from UConn. For all Geno's reputation as a master of talent scouting, he looked at Caitlin Clark and passed. Why? Because he already had Paige Buecher's day in Geno's world. There was no room for two-point guards, no matter how transcendent Clark might be. And when pressed about it, he didn't express regret or humility. Instead, he said that if Clark really wanted UConn, she should have called him. Think about that. The coach who built a legacy spotting generational talent before anyone else blamed a teenager for not chasing him. That wasn't just a recruiting miss. It was disrespect. And Clark never forgot it, so she went to Iowa. A program with no national banners, no mystique, no dynasty shine. To some, it looked like a fallback. But for Clark, it was freedom. At Iowa, she wasn't playing in anyone's shadow. She wasn't Geno's second choice or backup plan. She was the face of the program from day one. And she delivered. Not just with highlight reel buzzer beaters, but with packed arenas, record-smashing TV ratings, and a cultural impact that transformed women's basketball forever. Every shot she hit was a reminder. You missed this, but Geno? He doubled down. Rather than acknowledge her brilliance, he tried to minimize it. He called her a kid playing like she's in her driveway. He compared her constantly to Paige Buecher's, tethering her rise to his chosen star, as if Clark's success was nothing new, just another echo of UConn's greatness. It wasn't random, it was calculated. By keeping Clark's name tied to his players, Geno tried to keep himself in the story. But the backhanded compliments wore thin. Fans noticed. Coaches noticed. Analysts noticed. The world could see through it. Clark's impact didn't need qualifiers. She wasn't just a good player, she became a movement. Bigger crowds than NBA teams. More social media buzz than most pro athletes. A face that turned casual viewers into fans. She brought women's basketball into living rooms that had never watched it before. And she did it without UConn. Without Geno, still. He couldn't let it go as the spotlight shifted away from him. The charm slipped. What began as passive-aggressive commentary turned into open resentment. In June 2024, during an interview on The Dan Patrick Show, Auriemma crossed a line he couldn't walk back. He didn't just criticize Clark. He went after her fans, the people who had rallied around her, filled arenas, bought jerseys, and made women's basketball matter in a way it never had before. It was a stunning moment. The Hall of Fame coach, the face of a program that once elevated the sport, was now tearing down the very audience it depended on. The insecurity was palpable. Geno had gone from being the builder of dynasties to the man on the outside looking in. And that's when the offer came. A high-profile, high-paying opportunity. One final attempt to bring Clark into the fold, to claim a piece of her legacy before it was too late. But Clark didn't rage. She didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She just said no, and in doing so, she took back the power he once wielded. She humbled the man who thought he couldn't be humbled. Not with anger, not with tweets, but with quiet, undeniable authority. Because every revenge story starts with a mistake. And Geno's wasn't a bad timeout or a blown play.
The delusional fan base that follows her disrespected the WNBA players by saying she's going to go in that league and tear it apart. There were actually odds on she's third or fourth in betting odds in being MVP of the WNBA. These people are so disrespectful and so unknowledgeable and so stupid that it gives women's basketball a bad name. Okay, so the kid was set up for failure right from the beginning. And Diana said it best. This kid's in for a rude awakening.
Geno Auriemma wasn't subtle. He called Caitlin Clark's supporters delusional, claimed they didn't understand the game, and, unbelievably, accused them of damaging women's basketball. Why? Because they believed Clark could finish top 4 in MVP voting as a rookie. Geno, that wasn't passion, it was ignorance. And when Diana Taurasi chimed in with, "This kid's in for a rude awakening," it sealed the message. The establishment wasn't welcoming the moment. It was mocking it. But take a step back. Think about what was happening. Millions of new eyes had just flooded into women's basketball because of Clark. Families were showing up in jerseys. Kids were camping out to meet her. People who had never watched a WNBA game were now tuning in weekly. It was a movement. And Geno's response wasn't celebration. It was insult. Instead of embracing the energy, he scoffed at it. This wasn't analysis. It wasn't about X's and O's. It was personal. A direct hit on the lifeblood of Clark's rise. The fans by dismissing them. Geno wasn't just questioning their knowledge. He was undermining everything they represented. A new era, a new audience, a new standard. And because he's Geno Auriemma, people paid attention. His words carried weight. Which made them not only condescending, but dangerous. Calling her fans clueless. He wasn't just insulting them. He was casting doubt on her. The message was clear. This success isn't real. It won't last. The hype will fade. But here's the delicious twist. He was wrong. Caitlin Clark didn't fight back on social media. She didn't rant in interviews. She didn't have to. Her answer came in the only place that mattered. The court. What followed wasn't just validation. It was a dismantling of Geno's credibility. Clark won Rookie of the Year. She made All-WNBA first team, and when MVP voting wrapped, she finished 4th. Right where her so-called delusional fans had said she would. The very prediction Geno laughed at became reality. And with it, his grip on authority slipped. This wasn't just a victory for Caitlin. It was vindication for the millions who believed in her. Every parent who took their daughter to see her play. Every new fan who tuned in and stayed. Every casual viewer who became a diehard. Geno had dismissed them as noise. Clark proved they were visionaries. No revenge tour. No press conference takedowns. Just silent, undeniable performance. Crossovers that froze defenders. Laser-sharp passes. Highlights that flooded timelines and sold-out arenas. Night after night she delivered. And when the accolades rolled in, the debate ended. She had silenced him. Without ever speaking his name. There's poetry in that. Geno had long positioned himself as the gatekeeper of women's basketball. The wise elder. The one who knew better than the fans, better than the media, better than everyone. But he was wrong. The fans were right. Clark was right. Every record she broke, every crowd she drew, every headline she dominated was proof that he wasn't the kingmaker anymore. She didn't need him. She never did. And the real irony. She wasn't even trying to prove anything. She wasn't thinking about him. She was just being Caitlin Clark. And that, just being herself, was enough to humble him completely. By the end of her rookie year, Caitlin Clark wasn't just living up to the hype. She had obliterated every doubt. She wasn't just part of the conversation anymore. She was the conversation. The one shaping the narrative. Meanwhile, Geno Auriemma's jabs had aged like milk in the sun. His comments about her fans, once framed as expert opinion, now read like some of the worst takes in recent sports memory. Bitter, insecure, embarrassingly wrong. But Geno couldn't let it go being wrong. He couldn't stomach that. And by this point, it wasn't just about Clark's talent. It was about what she represented. The shift in power, the passing of the torch, the undeniable truth that women's basketball no longer revolved around him. And instead of accepting that, he did what he always does. He kept talking, interview after interview, podcast after podcast, her name never far from his lips. Every time the same pattern. A sprinkle of praise, a subtle dig, a compliment wrapped in a caveat. But the more he spoke, the more obvious it became. Clark wasn't just rewriting record books. She was living rent-free in Geno Auriemma's head. Eventually, the words stopped being enough. He tried everything. Ignored her as a recruit. Downplayed her rise. Mocked her fans. Tried to tether her stardom to his legacy. None of it worked. Clark kept rising. Geno kept fading, so he pivoted. From words to money. That's when the $1 million offer entered the picture. A flashy new women's 3-on-3 league. Backed by Breanna Stewart and Afisa Collier. Ambitious. Well-funded. Geno was deeply involved behind the curtain. But they lacked the one thing they needed most. A face. Caitlin Clark. He'd ignored her when she was a teenager. Dismissed her as she changed the game. But now he needed her. And when the offer came, wrapped in prestige and cash, Clark's answer was simple, no. And just like that, Geno's last attempt to control the narrative collapsed, without her ever raising her voice.